everybody, welcome back to our channel, Blue Creek Detectors. The last video podcast did pretty well. I think the audio turned out all right.
Yeah, it did. It did. Yeah, so, I looked at it and yeah, the audio turned out great actually.
Good. Today's guest is the local historian, the Elk River Muskrat. He has a very popular Facebook channel, Facebook page that has plethora of like anything that you can think of, local Elk River history, West Virginia history. So I got to open up with my first question, and that is, what makes the Elk River Muskrat tick?
Oh, dude, I don't know about that one. I think I don't know. I've always had an affinity for water, even since the day I was born. We stayed with my grandparents up in Broad Run, and you could always find me in the creek catching minnows.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been fond of riverways and stuff like that. And just come a few years ago after the 2016 flood, I was really curious about elk and its origins, and started diving deep into its history. And it's not easy to find as compared to other rivers like Coal River, Campbell's Creek, other places. The lower Elk is a mystery per se, especially below Clay, Charleston.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like over the years, just doing the metal detecting, like our channel, there is, we've seen firsthand too, that there is little documented evidence of a lot of the communities along the Elk River. And yeah, what you're doing, I think, has been super important, documenting all this stuff and presenting it so all the people online can see it, that it's there.
Yes, yeah, that was my main goal, was to preserve history. Almost everything that I found it's been out there, but we just don't know about it. So you just get lucky and you find things. If you're on the internet and you're just one person using a search engine, then you're only limited to so much amount of information as to where you've been before, because of the way the internet works.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a group of people and you use a group of people as a search engine, then all these people get different results, and then you share these results,
mm-hmm.
and you can find some pretty neat things that way.
Yeah.
So the muskrat to me is more a persona of the river itself,
yeah.
the community itself working together to preserve some history.
And not too long ago, you got a lot of recognition from West Virginia Explorer and even which channel news?
Channel 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brad Rice.
Yep.
On the coonskin.
You got a lot of recognition for the research that you did on one of the someplace on Mill Creek. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, Mill Creek. David Robinson was the first to get this property, and when he got it, it was one of the first planned mill seats on Elk, and probably in the Charleston area.
Wow.
Goes back into the early 1700s. Late 1700s, 1790s, something like that.
Wow.
And he told me about the place, and I went out there and I saw it, and I already had some information. I knew the name itself gives things away. Mill Creek is a very intriguing creek, but this Richardson named Robinson, he ended up being part of the first Kanawha County court after Fort Lee when Charleston was first being formed. So he was a prominent character, and he ended up moving to Ohio eventually. Robinson Run in St. Albans is named after him. And that's where his family ended up going to. But the mill was a two. There was a grist and a sawmill. It sat above a fall. It was a beautiful place.
You got the opportunity to visit the location not too long ago. How was that? Tell us about what it looked like there.
It gave you a good feeling. It's a very wonderful, relaxed area. You have falls, of course, that are probably about 20 to 25 foot tall, and it's got a little bay. And then above that is where the old house used to sit and the mill used to sit. And you get the feeling of some Irish or something like that was there by the way the ice house was designed. Which is people don't think about ice houses, and those are interesting finds because they're not everywhere. Not everybody had an ice house. They had to be planned perfectly on these artesian wells. So.
A lot of the metal detecting channels that I follow, like Green Mountain Metal Detecting, there's a lot of ice houses up in Vermont, like the 1700s Vermont area, Revolutionary War and around that.
Right.
You imagine what it takes to keep that stuff cool.
Exactly.
So it has to be designed just right.
Right. Yeah, it's tedious work, and then some of the stones that they cut to make these things are absolutely huge. You need more than just you need oxen. You don't. A boy ain't going to get it.
Yeah.
So, and we found some auction shoes in several places. So some huge shoes for horse too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was I love the West Virginia Explorer. I like working with him.
Cool.
It's good to collaborate and make things happen, and to reach out and be with converse with other historians and help keep everything out there and bring the things to new light. And that's the reason why I chose the name Muskrat is by animal totem, and the animal meaning is the muskrat digs down and goes underneath the water, and he grabs dirt to bring up to start life.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man.
So if it's not for the muskrat going down and dredging up the bottoms of as far as he can go, he actually dies. In the story, he actually dies. But when he comes back up to the top, he still has that dirt in his hand. So that is why I chose muskrat.
Wow, I had no idea that was the origin of that. I've talked with you many times. That's a cool story.
Yeah, well, we've always been known as river rats. I really didn't want to be termed a river rat. It sounded too dirty.
Yeah. I remember my dad used to talk about Elk River rats or whatever, back in the day.
Yeah, and then that's because we were the last ones to have a railroad. Other people were getting their stuff hauled out while Elk River was still floating logs and longboats down the river.
Yeah.
So.
And I love, when I go to the West Virginia Archives, I love reading about, like in the Elk Communities books, it'll tell you about the flatboats that used to come up to here.
Yeah.
All the way up here to, right now we're in Queen Shoals, a beautiful valley. I mean, look at that. And they used to take boats up. How far did they used to take those flatboats all the way up here?
Well, coming down, if it was a flatboat, it could come from anywhere from Sutton on down. Flatwoods, they made boats and floated them down. So any place that had a good flat bottom, a good place to store when the water was down, so that when the tide and the water would come up, it would help carry them away, was a good place to make a boat or something to carry something heavy. And the shoals provide a perfect opportunity to create chutes and dams. And they tried that on the Elk by blasting it, but it didn't quite work.
And there were several dams and mill runs, raceways, all throughout the Elk River, all the way up to Sutton, and beyond.
Yeah, and this area here is an early crossing. And its history goes back a really long time. It's probably was more popular before any of the other places between Elk and Clay, other than Forest Creek. There was a whole town here before they turned in and even had a town. So,
what all can you tell us about Queen Shoals in general, like this location, this valley that we're sitting in?
Well, by newspaper, Queen was originally called Johns Creek, and it wasn't a big traveled through area for a while. On an old map, what we're sitting on, and where we're at, is a dam that's up there. It used to be a dam, and then it had a raceway over there where the longboats would come through, get loaded, and then taken off. Behind me here, directly behind me here, is where it would cross. Down to that island, there was a wagon crossing down there that was 12 to 16 foot wide and helped provide the raceway for the mill. The Snyder's Mill, which is probably built around 1830 by the Hill family. Maybe earlier. I don't have my paperwork on that, but it was a very popular area. And
is it feasible to do like deed research through here? I've never done deed research, but is it easy to look back to see like the property of one particular area? And I don't know how they kept track of this.
Yeah, you'll spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
At records and archives trying to find things. I rely mostly on newspaper articles and stuff like that, and things that people send me, and books. Books tell a lot. I bought a lot of books and read a lot of books.
Yeah.
And not for knowing the area and growing up here, some of the places that they talk about, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know that. So
I definitely understand the newspaper archive direction, because a lot of the research that I have successfully made on some of these old towns that we detect at is from the newspaper archives down in Charleston at the state archives. You can. It's an interactive search. You don't have to go through those. What are those machines called that you just watch it go through all the time?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you don't have to do that anymore. So, but those newspapers go back all the way to the 1800s for this area. I found some information on Dorothy. I found some information on Pleasant Island was an interesting one.
Oh man!
And a lot of people don't know about Pleasant Island down in Elkview, but yeah, you could probably elaborate a little bit more about it, but it's super interesting history.
But yeah, at Pleasant Island, the Brothel, a good old place that the stern wheeler stop really was booming during it was really booming during the oil days of Blue Creek. It's really hard tracing that history. There's some things that say it was first founded by the Blennerhassetts, but come to find out through the family of the Prices and Youngs that was actually first deeded to the Prices.
Yeah.
Yep. So the Price family, and which is a interesting family genealogically.
Yeah, tell us about that. You've told me some super cool stories about the Prices.
And it's not just the Price family.
Yeah.
There are gaps in genealogy where things get crazy, and you can't really decide or know who this person was. And there are two different Price families and but it's just crazy. But then you come to you just like most other information, you come to like a standstill once you reach a certain point. Especially once you reach the Civil War, there is a standstill. Then you got to research all the way back to the Indian Wars, and then there's another standstill. And to find all these things, you don't have to just go to West Virginia archives. You got to go to Pennsylvania archives, Maryland archives, Virginia archives, Ohio archives, Kentucky, and once you really start getting a general feel of the way things were, West Virginia was a totally different place.
Yeah.
Totally different from what you see now.
This is the frontier, and it kind of still is the frontier.
But poor record keeping, causing Bruin lands, which cover really, to me, wanting more, covered all the West Virginia, and those Bruin lands even go into how the Hatfields and McCoys had their arguments over lands.
Yeah.
And so it didn't just happen after the Battle of Point Pleasant, where these revolutionary guys got their properties. That there were delinquent deeds and stuff that were out there, and exchanges that were made before the United States was the United States. It's really hard to explain. Everybody lost property. Everybody lost money. From George Washington down to the little guys running the little forts. So the little man really sucked it up to make America happen.
Yeah.
And West Virginia was a big part of that.
Yeah. And West Virginia's unfortunately been notorious for just low income in general. Even during the mines, when the rich were getting super rich, and then all the mine workers were just working for scraps. This whole state has been.
At the time, it was. Yeah, at the time, it's a post-slavery period, and they end up basically use slave labor to do the Great Build Back.
Well, even during the Great Depression, for example, we have found a lot of evidence of the Work Progress Authority, WPA. But I mean, it was a good program. A lot of people around here didn't have jobs once the mines started going under. So FDR came up with the WPA, and they started building roads throughout here, and they were giving them a relatively good wage. A lot of this was built, in the 30s and 40s, with the WPA stuff. In the Elk Communities, one of the books, you see pictures of them building Quick Road.
Yeah,
and that was a WPA project.
Right, and that's people don't realize how the railroads, the coal companies, and the government help make our back roads and some of our throughways. And it goes right down to the very beginning of the Kanawha Railroad. And you research back to that, and it goes back to Independent Dale routes. So back before that is your Indian routes, then your native routes, and then you try to find the big routes, which are really hard to find.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about West Virginia is it's like putting a big old X right on the map and saying right here. The way it's defined is by its routes to the north and to the east, and even to the west, where everything after the Blue Ridge and Appalachian Plateau levels out. The escape zone. Yeah. I call it the escape zone from the mountains. Yeah. And there's very little history known about the center of West Virginia because of the way it was inhabited and surrounded before the center got populated.
Yeah. And
the reason why there wasn't records was because they was paying more attention to the Revolutionary War and what was going on there. It's really complicated stuff, but and I'm sure some things got left out on purpose, and some things were, just forgotten about.
Yeah. It is one of the worst parts about West Virginia history. I mean, a lot of it was just left out of a lot of the storybooks, or it was just lost through time. I mean, you have fire. Imagine the stuff that has been destroyed by random fires. A lot of houses back in the day weren't built with fire-resistant materials, and you got these stories. You got history of families that just disappeared over the years. And I always try to think of some of these old all these old houses that we find out in the middle of nowhere when we
on any maps.
Yeah, that aren't on any maps. What happened to all of the possessions of those people? What happened to the books that they had? Those things just rot away through time.
Right. How long has this place been here?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are some people that got directly off the boat, and even though they said don't go west, don't go past the Blue Ridge, they was coming. There was trappers and stuff like that, and I'm sure they got killed or starved or.
And you look at an 1895 map of Charleston, like some of the first USGS official government maps. It was a big booming town. I mean, it was a lot there, and there was a lot of people coming in. And you can see even where they started carving out the roads for like Canal City, for example. And they knew that's where they wanted to build Canal City. It's almost totally empty, but you have the roads that are there now, and there might be 5 houses or so there.
The Great Canal.
Yeah.
And it was planned by Washington. At first, James and Woods Turnpike. And we have the Woods family that lives around here. So there's a lot of early Charleston notaries, that noted people that had interest in this area, and just because of Malden land and all those areas were just right over the ridge, and they were supplying the coal, they were supplying salt, they were supplying cannel oil. Elk River played a large role, a very important role in the formation of Charleston.
Oh yeah, I guarantee it. And so for example, when this railroad was completed, the governor himself, I think it was, which governor was it? McCorkle. Governor McCorkle himself was one of the first trains down this railroad, all the way from Sutton to Charleston.
And it was a big whoop-de-doo. It was the first, your first 119. The first very good traveled road that wasn't broken up. So it crossed a lot of paths on its way north to its connection to Charleston, then Davis Creek, and all that area. The original paths have been somewhat changed through time because of railroads and transportation.
Yeah, I love what they're doing with the whole rail trail thing, being able to travel the most of the distance. It's just to think of all the trains they used to go up and down that. When you think of some of the stories, some of those on the
wrecks at Sycamore and
yes. The lost train in the middle of the night, the one that had to stop. I think, they had to stop somewhere because it was snowing so much, and they didn't find the train till the next day. I just imagine, since those cabooses and everything on the trains, they used to have a bed, they had a furnace.
Oh yeah.
They had a toilet, food.
Yeah, well, people don't realize there was a purpose to that caboose. He was a brakeman too.
Yeah.
It was part of keeping control of the train. So the caboose and the engine guy had to work together.
Yeah.
It's I imagine it wasn't quite that easy when they didn't have microphones.
Yeah. A cup and a string on the other end.
One guy hanging off the end like this, looking for the other guy to wave a certain signal, or yeah. So
yeah, if you all know, how did the engineer communicate with the caboose? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I've seen I don't know how old telegraphs are, but you see telegraph towers all through here. But Did they have little mini telegraphs on the trains? Let us know.
I know that they had a small line that ran along for communication along the line. You know, there was telegraph lines that, and in a few places, you can still see some still hanging around. I think there's one at Pinch, and there's one between Middle Creek and Leatherwood up there in Clay.
Yep. I know exactly the one you're talking about.
And that's a good place there to see a an old longboat dock.
Yes.
Where they loaded coal and stuff, and you can see what the original form of it underneath the concrete.
Yeah.
You know, and then how they built around it. So,
if you follow the rail trail from what used to be the Heartland Bridge towards Leatherwood, you'll see the ruins on the left side. You can see a mill raceway down in the water.
It looks like a mill raceway, but that's where they would bring the boats in.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but it's still a raceway.
Yeah, it is a giant area that wasn't on any maps. Yeah, that's another thing too. You look at the 50s maps and below, beyond, it's not there, but you can tell that's old technology. It's yes.
I like Leatherwood Creek there.
It's an interesting place.
It definitely has age to it.
Yeah.
Some deep age, not something rare.
Yeah.
And
that railway that goes out Leatherwood, it gets real close to Belva.
Yeah.
I mean, he goes all the way out there. It's straight into.
Well, people say, that's one of the things that got me interested in. You know, people say, well, this road used to connect, or this rail used to connect, and this rail used to connect, and so when you start researching routes and knowing how the routes were first made, these early railroads and their spurs are really, really important. And Leatherwood is underrated up there. That's big Leatherwood. Down below it says Little Leatherwood. But it's really underrated as a passageway. It's nice and level.
Yeah.
Which is makes it very important because that's the way the buffalo would go. And it reaches almost a 20 mile. Just like you said, I mean, it's just right out there. So only a ridge separated the railroad. So finding where they stopped and they ended with these railroads is really hard because the capital fire of the 20s, and there's a lot of lost records from that.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And they even admit that there was a massive amount of lost records during that time.
The mine wars, all that stuff going on. That's interesting research itself. It leads you to make conclusions that you really don't want to make.
Yes.
And that's the thing about this area is it leads you to conclusions that you really don't want to make, but you have to at least put them on the slate for consideration. So, I mean, I question a lot of even what I do and what I'm looking at because I'm not a trained eye in geology and metallurgy. I'm not trained in archaeology or anything like this. I'm teaching myself and I'm learning myself. And when it comes to ores and what's here, it gets complicated, and you can start easily making assumptions. But this, to me, West Virginia, and especially this area, is a triangle, so to say. Area 51, just because of the correlation of how the West Virginia was surrounded, and it being the last part of the wilderness that Daniel Boone knew and Simon Kenton knew. And there's a mark in the book, Tales of the Elk. Vern even speaks about it. You know, and one of the marks of the last of the wilderness was Queen Shoals. And there's an obelisk at the mouth of the creek that denotes that, and is part of what I'm thinking was the paper railroad that first came up through here and helped build the roads. and actually they helped build roads under different names throughout the state.
Yeah.
And that was part of the what now is the Kanawha Railroad.
So, building off of the tale of the elk, how does it relate to you? How do you relate to that book?
I think it's a great book. Definitely informative, as I've gotten a ton of information from it and been able to collaborate from some maps and stuff. There's still one map out there I haven't found yet, and that's the original survey of the elk. He talks about it and talks about the original stream names and things like that. But
I'd love to see that.
It's very informative. He tells the story of where he goes off of, where when this was first had a dam built across it and the raceway made for the boats. He was coming down. He tells the story coming down on the raft with someone behind him, and they go over the wall because they didn't know the wall was there.
Yeah.
And so when he goes over the wall, it upends and does a nosedive, and it's standing there, and the guy that was behind it come up and busted it into pieces. And so they're in the water, and they make it down to Snyder's Mill before they're out of the water, which is that island down there, that very far island on what would be your right. That's where the raceway cuts a turn and goes to Snyder's Mill. And some guys down there saw him and tried to get him out of the water, but they had to walk all the way about the clay over the hill.
That's a long way.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Oh.
And he explains the distance, of miles, and it's almost doubled if you take the river,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So that's where you hit that twistabout area of elk, that snaking area.
I like to call it the antler of the elk, because you look at a map. I mean, it looks like an antler.
Yeah,
the horns of an around there.
Well, there's an article in the paper about Richard Batchelor and and how much he loves the elk, and he's talking about it being a part of his arteries and stuff, coming up his hand, and really, it really was a lifeline. It was a vein. First canal system, first way of travel.
And that can of oil from Falling Rock, for example. How else did they transport that out of here? It was the elk.
Well, Elk Refinery was at first it was a place where they stored barrels and staves that be transported by longboat. And the bottom looked a whole lot different there before they made the plant. What the plant's sitting on has actually been pulled out and it's been filled in. Where the creek is, the original creek bed was at least 5 feet below where it is now.
Wow, yeah.
So you had like a backwash in there.
Mm.
And then you had the same situation here where they had built a chute coming out so that you could make a bay, and then you could have people coming down this way. Because one of the purposes of it was to be able to move things in low water. So you had to make a chute, which would you bring an arm out like this,
mm-hmm.
and then you plan where your chute's going to be. You bring two arms, and then you force all the water in one direction. And that's what the purpose of this was to split that water. So when you're pulling a longboat up, like they did on the first survey, you had to dig out a chute and then pull the boat up. And a lot of times, before they even tried to lock the dam system, the people were staged at these areas to help these longboats get through, even when coming down in low tide, which it's not really low water right now. It's a couple inches, 4 or 5 inches up, something like that. But still, even at this rate, they're going to get stuck.
Yeah.
And you had to have teams to pull them through. Yeah. You really did. And people hated the elk navigation system. There's stories about the elk navigation system being sabotaged during a flood. So, because what happened was people were being charged to go through these chutes, and where they wasn't being charged before. So, and what these chutes actually done was made it harder for them to navigate because they had to if you wasn't allowed to use the chute, you had to unload your boat and then load your boat back up on the other side and then go up through there. So the legend is that they got together one time and waited for a flood, and they dammed everything up at upriver, and then just took everything out downriver.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the end of the lock and dam system.
Gotcha. Yeah, and if y'all traveled up and down the Elk River, you would see just how crazy that would make everything.
And actually, how shallow the Elk really is, it's really pretty much basically a huge creek.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in a lot of places, especially. I mean, what's the deepest part of the Elk that you know of?
From what I've heard, it's somewhere around 60 foot at Hart's Branch, right up there in the Queen Bend, Queen Eddy. So that long eddy there, there's Hart's Branch.
That place is deep.
Mm-hmm. I was told it was 60 foot there.
You know exactly the area that you're talking about. When you walk up the rail trail too, I mean, you can see how. I mean, you can't see the bottom of it. It's dark.
Yeah. Well, the old bridge people used to dive, but that was a very deep hole, and Queen Hole is probably one of the deepest. Yeah. The mouth, I really wouldn't consider the mouth a natural hole. Although I would be consider. I'd like to know how deep it is. It's at least 9 foot deeper than what it should be.
Gotcha.
Because of the locks and dams on the canal.
And like a little area right here. I mean, you could. The water wasn't so swift. I mean, you could easily walk across it.
Oh yeah. Normal water level of a lot of the elk. There's a lot of the elk you can do waist to even knee high, and there's stories about one guy putting a guy up on a race to see who can get to one place the quickest, and it's happened down in Elkview. And so the guys took off running, and the other guy ran across the river and only got his ankles wet to get the guy there. So, in drought season, it can get pretty dry.
We, in the future, we have quite a few documentaries that are planned. One of which I'd like to be kind of like a test would be the Mothman. So, can you give us a little bit of insight on Mothman Elk River correlation?
Correlation? Why would he be here?
Well, that and just a little brief story of how it could have been the first sighting.
I
know it's a big question.
I don't want to offend locals.
Oh, okay.
Because some say that the crew was inebriated. Some say that they wasn't.
Yeah.
And then there's the location where you have Reamer as the real location, and then, from what I gather, and then Coon Cemetery as a second location. Yeah. So there's confusion to those two locations as to where he was seen. And from what I'm gathering, the confusion is definitely understandable because the names on the tombstones, and they're just a year apart.
Really?
Yeah.
It's Homer something, right?
Homer Smith.
Homer Smith, and there are two different Homer Smiths.
Mm-hmm. Yep. One of them's got just a little old tombstone, and the other one's got this nice one. It's got his wife beside of it, and it's all marbleized and stuff. But it's only a year apart.
It's got a statue over it. That's the one. Or...
No, that's the Reamer.
Okay.
It's got the
statue.
Jesus with broken hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found that interesting. Just one of those things that add to the aura in the feel.
Right now, I can't remember. There are a few newspaper articles that talk about this when all the stuff in Point Pleasant was going on, and I feel like it says Reamer though.
It said Clendenin, and then they notified the constable.
Got the book right here.
Oh, okay. I never read that book.
Written by Jeff Walmsley. It has several newspaper clippings in here.
All right.
And I forgot that we had this here today. So I'll find it.
Yeah, Mothman's continuing research. I know of several sightings here, and there wasn't just one. There's even a story of him flying over someone's car along Reno.
Yeah, that was with the one out Aaron's Fork.
No, this is Reno. This is Reno. There were several sightings at Reno, not just the one.
Super interesting.
And that's what I'm told by a family member.
And then when you look at, like it's a straight line from here, and then the one that you told me was somewhere around Sissonville, between Sissonville and Elkview.
It's all an old native trail.
Yeah, it's
directly on an old native trail. So and that's part of the path that I've been researching, that I first started researching that I didn't know about, that connected to Coons New Road. And that was the shortest path between Greenbrier and Point Pleasant.
It says at Reamer, it says, flying man seen here, man claims. Kanawha County said Thursday they saw flying man similar to what was reported Wednesday by residents of Mason County. Kent Duncan Blue Creek said he saw something that looked like a brown human being Saturday in a wooded area at Reamer near Clendenin.
So you can see why there was a lot of confusion out there.
And it was Homer Smith.
Yeah. So, but from what I gather, there was one in Clendenin too. So the people stand firm on that.
Yeah, and there were several people that were with them.
Mm-hmm. And they even point out the tree that they come out of. It's not there anymore, but it was an old tree a couple of years ago. But I lay more credence on personally on the Reamer sighting, not the Clendenin sighting.
Makes sense.
And that goes, like I said, that goes back to your old roots and stuff like that, and just questionable stuff,
Yeah. But we would like to do our own kind of interpretation on the Mothman sometime soon, and it's an interesting West Virginia story.
Yeah, well, when you know more about Elk Refinery and following that, and the connecting ridges that cut off this bend, Dry Ridge, going to Long Ridge and stuff like that, the original roots, you can see why why he would be there, especially if he's going back to the heart of origin, or being flushed out of the wilderness. Whatever he is, he could be an owl. He could be a crane. It's really hard to say.
It is kind of funny when you look at, like they kept saying it was a sandhill crane.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the picture of a sandhill crane, you can see why they thought. Yeah,
and an owl. There are versions of owls and bats that are close to 6 foot tall. So, and the way an owl is measured is by its wingspan, not its height.
Yeah.
So, when you take something that's almost 6 foot tall, what will be the wingspan to carry that? And it's going to look quite odd when the adrenaline's on you and you're seeing something. The oxygen goes to your eyes get a little big, things look bigger than what they are, So, but there's a sighting of him right down the road from here at Burke. Not Burke, but the crap. Can't remember what this used to be called now. Mm-hmm. But just right down the road here. Yeah. And then there was a sighting at the Old Clendenin. There was a sighting then there's other two there. And possibly one on the flank. There's one out towards Poco.
Okay.
Aaron's Fork.
Yeah.
That might have been Mothman. I don't know.
They just heard it.
They just heard it, didn't see it. And then it was enough to scare them bad.
I do like how on the Elk River Muskrat page, you encourage some of the cryptozoology stuff that you.
Well, yeah, I like mystery, and that's part of history is based first word of mouth.
Yeah.
So you got the word of mouth, and then you got to take this instance with Elk River is you have to take these old stories and these old. Well, you didn't hear it from me, and my papa told me. You got to take these stories and find out if they're true or not.
Yeah.
And some things really leave you to question.
Yeah.
But Elk Refinery being an explosive plant, that's one that people don't know. It had Elk River supplied explosives for the wars. Elk River supplied the element for the first bomb.
Yeah. Yeah, I have read something about that as well.
Yeah, right there on Blue Creek, Stocks Branch. Yeah. So,
wow.
And if you go into the native and native tellings of Mothman, you could probably even take them back to the Virginia area, Blue Ridge lines.
Yeah.
It probably goes back even further than that into Opequon Canal.
Yeah.
And the Monacan Nation and how they fought to try to keep their lands.
And that's interesting too. So I don't know that much about the Native American history around here, but places like Mount Carbon, for example, that are extremely interesting yet unexplained.
Right, and you find these maps out there that say Mount Carbon was basically a pyramid. I don't see that personally, but I do see that the structure there of the connection to South America, which early people that surveyed the mounds and stuff said that there was a group of people here that were pre-Aztec and Mayan, going by the name of Toltec, and they seem to be pretty mean.
Mm-hmm. The Toltec were around the area like the Olmec and Mayan, Aztec area. But what's super interesting to me is that there was never. I don't know if the Mayans have always owned that property or what, but there was no real in-depth archaeology that was done at Mount Carbon. I mean, they surveyed the mountain or the hills of the walls, for example. If you guys Google Mount Carbon earthworks, so there are miles and miles of large walls built by the natives. They took these rocks just like this from the creeks straight up, and they built long walls. And it almost looks like military structures, like walls that would be like a fortification.
Right, either for protection or even for hunting. To me, some of them remind me of the old Irish lands where they would make these long walls and had these gates to hold in their animals and to herd, or to when they're hunting to force something through a channel so that they could kill what's coming through the channel.
Yeah.
But it even had towers. Now, towers is definitely a defensive. There's a defensive thing, and a communicative thing also. If you're going to send word on a long way, you're going to use a tower. You're going to use smoke to send a signal, and you need a tower to see that signal.
Yeah. And for example, like what you're talking about, signals, is in the Campbell's Creek book. There's a story that was told by Laidley, and it's in Laidley's book.
I love Laidley.
Yeah, I know you do.
Laidley and Hale, man, they're the best.
It talks about the mound on Campbell's Creek. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed or not, but when you go around that little bend on I-64, where Campbell's Creek is, it used to be a toll bridge. It looks like a mound. And every year before the first snow, the natives would walk up through the creek, and then they would go straight to the top, and then they would make fires on top of this mountain, and then they would completely disappear without a trace afterwards, and all they would find are the ashes of their fires on top of that mountain.
Right, and now it's insinuated by lately that Boone even followed them up one time to see what's going on, and nobody could ever find any artifact.
Yeah.
They always left the place clean, and the interesting thing, you have to take stories from one person, stories from another person, and then you start finding things that. Whoa! You start looking at OD Hill and going, well, because you're wondering where these Indians came from, and then you start looking at OD Hill and you realize they're coming from Blue Creek. And then when you go deeper into history, and when Abraham Woods sent a survey party up, there was a guy that escaped captivity, and he come down the Kanawha, and about Campbell's Creek, he said Monaghan Town,
Yeah.
and so that on a great river. So Abraham Wood sent a survey party directly after that to see what was going on. So
that's interesting that you talk about that too, because when you Google that Monaghan, and then you look at the map, it is right there where Charleston should be.
yes.
So what can you? I know we've been talking a long time.
Right there where that mound's at.
Yeah, it would be there, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir.
It really would. When you look at that map of where they annotated Monaghan, it's there. It's like right there along the bend there.
And there's the other interesting story of a pot of gold back there.
There is also some gold stories talking about that. And there's a lot of different origins for that gold. In the Campbell's Creek book, it says that the Spanish paid the Native Americans in gold for white scalps.
Yeah, I think the French did too.
Huh?
When the French did too.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, the French had a lot to do with the Iroquois coming down here and killing a lot and driving out the natives during the Beaver Wars. And that's one of the reasons why they didn't really know what was going on here before settlement. It's because pretty much everybody had been driven out of West Virginia by the Iroquois.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the Iroquois Confederacy and how big that was, huge, yeah. And believe it or not, if you go through the tribes of those nations, these small little groups that got together, the Monaghan was one of them. And to those that don't know the Monaghan tribe, this is the tribe of Pocahontas, and Powhatan. And Kanawha is named after a half brother of his, Opechancanough. So there's really evidence that shows that there really was somebody here, but what happened to him, I don't know.
Yeah.
My suspect is O.D. Hill. But I think probably after a lot of them went to Point Pleasant. That's a very spiritual place, and had a big Shawnee town there at one time on the other side of the river.
Huh. There's a lot of interesting stories about all this stuff. It's do some research, do some Googling, because I know we've gone over a lot of different topics, and this is definitely not going to be the last.
Oh, definitely. We'll pick another rock bar somewhere someday and do it again. You know?
Yeah. Is there anything you would like to go over before we roast in this sun?
Well, actually, to let you know, there used to be a pocket that ran through here, and he would dock over there where the old Snyders used to live.
Uh-huh.
There's an old dock there. But the first time a steamboat come up through here was for a couple of men that come from the north, and we're going to make axe handles.
Really?
And so they bought a bunch of tools, had it brought up by a steamer, and got off and started, got the place together, and it eventually went kaput.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know why, but it just went kaput. I guess it was getting somewhere else better. Cheaper.
Yeah. they probably realized, I mean, this is out here. I mean, at that time, this place was very remote.
Well, you can go out and set up, but if you don't get that contract,
True.
you know, if you don't get those people coming in to buy, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and that was when a time when the great harvesting of lumber was going on, getting ready to happen.
Oh man! As he mentions that, I got to think of I met you at the Elk River Museum at one time, and I was looking through some of the pictures and some of the books there, and these hills were almost completely barren at one point because there was so much timbering.
No tree left uncut. No, literally. No, I don't care if they had to climb 50 foot up on a hillside, just like 95 degrees, they're going to get that tree.
Find an area here that is actually old growth that hasn't been touched by timber. You just can't find it.
No, a lot of it really even went on into the 60s, and that's one of the things that got me out of the woods was when I started, you know, when I was a teenager, they had, about the 90s, they had harvested falling rock, and then I knew it would be about time to harvest again. And trying to find things when you're out there, you don't want people out there destroying stuff. And so I felt the urgency to make myself known and gather as much information as I can, start applying it.
Oh, that chimney on Falling Rock, man! I wish it could be preserved.
Yeah,
right, not as much as you do. I mean, you really want. I mean, you're really for the preservation of that thing. I mean, it's old.
It's a staple of ingenuity.
Yeah. When you go out there and you see this lone chimney, you don't think it's as old as it is, but it is. When was that?
Circa 1850 is when that was built.
It's still a giant chimney, still there.
And right, and it's coined by a newspaper as possibly the oldest refinery in America. And researching that is complicated too, because America didn't start until
17.
Right. So, but if there's any other location that I would suspect to be a first refinery, would be probably in Kentucky at Kenton's Furnace.
Gotcha.
And it goes everything with finding shale and making sure that you can boil for salt. You got to be able to do that to start an outpost. Got to have that salt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kentucky. That was you got Boonesboro. That was going to be, that was a big town at one point, frontier town, and the proposed colony of Vandalia.
Right, which people don't realize through Washington, Boone was in that area, and before, and when you look at history and the lines of counties and areas, West Virginia is like on West Virginia. So what the hell went on here? So as time goes on, you start making connections that you never did before. Realizations of what George Washington was up to, what was really going on. You get a sort of a vision, and it really helps to put things together. It's just like Elk River wasn't just important for its lumber, it was important for its ore, it was important for its salt works. Big R had salt works. The Elk to Kanawha Trail, the Elk to Pocatalico Trail, the Elk to Gully, the Greenbrier. Elk's in the middle of the state. And it's along one of the, to me, the oldest paths of North America. So, and it shows in its scenery. It's evident when you look at the rock. You see the ores in the rock. You see there's hard to tell what you will find. You can find a fossil that's almost perfectly preserved, or you can find an Indian artifact. So
I'm always looking for artifacts.
And the look for salt is really compelling in how it goes into oil and petroleum and how things transitioned in West Virginia into Kanawha Valley. The Kanawha Valley was once just one huge assembly line of refineries that took excess from one and turned it into another thing. So where you're mining the ore for metals, you get a slag, and then they take that slag over to the glass plant, and then they break it up, and then they make your depression glass, and right. So the lead in the glass that they couldn't get out, all that, and it gives it a certain color.
That's cool. That's
right.
Super interesting.
And you have to know that if you want to know if a rock is real rock or if it's a manufactured rock, especially if you're looking for evidence of mining and or ancient mining, current mining, looking for old coal mines, famed silver mines. I've even heard of gold
tried
mines.
to mine for everything out here. This place was surveyed real hard.
Right, and that goes back to the beginning of the before the railroad was made. There was 2 surveys that were made, and one was being the Doane survey, but they surveyed both sides of Elk River, and it's talked about until the Elk song. So not only were they making plans for the railroad, they was making plans for a wagon road following the other side. And that's where Kanawha, West Virginia comes in, and how West Virginia dug itself out of a deficit of Virginia money after the Civil War was through the railroads. These ones that weren't made yet, from the interior, that nothing was harvested from. So, and that's how Kanawha Rails got so big. And which a lot of people don't know that it was originally. They call the Elk River Railroad was originally the P&O or the Blackjack Railroad. So it goes.
Heard that. Yeah, I think you posted something about that on your page as well.
Yeah, and it's another one of those things that leave you hanging, because there's so many terms for blackjack. One is a jolly pirate. You've been shanghaied. One's forced labor. Another refers to petroleum. Another one might refer to even George Washington. I'm not sure on that yet. But in a letter to his brother, and we start researching the Charlestons and stuff like that, and the Western surveys. In a letter to his brother, he refers to himself as Dr. Black.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
So,
when you finish all that research, we want to hear about it.
Yeah, well, and also another thing is that the black oak, which was commonly used to make railroad ties with. So, and it goes back to the reamer situation, where it was changed from Sibiel to reamer, and nobody knows why or how.
Yeah, it is odd.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for thanks for.
I'll talk all day long.
I will too. And hey, thanks to you all for watching. And this, like I said, it's probably not going to be the first, or probably not going to be the last interview we have with Elk River Muskrat.
Unscripted ramblings.
That's it. Yes. Isn't that what all podcasts are, though? Unscripted ramblings.
Yeah, but basically, I guess this is a new version of Tell the Elk. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, hey, stay tuned for more. Check out the Elk River Muskrat's Facebook page. There is a lot of history on there, and he posts maybe 2-3 times a day sometimes, and there's some good stuff on there.
Yeah, and it doesn't all just cover Elk River. Some of it's petroleum history, oil history, mining history, metallurgy history, manufacturing gases, things like that. That Elk River was forefront on.
Yeah.
When it came to the golden era of industrialization.
Cool.
Yeah. gasoline,
Yeah.
stored gas canisters that led for harder fires and better ore, better welds. For a lot of that stuff, and running pressures in how a steam engine works to measure how gases work inside a contained system and compress that gas.
Yeah.
It's really amazing how things roll over into each other. And once you go down a rabbit hole, it's terrible to go down 5 of them at the same time. You know?
Yeah. I think we all do it though.
Yeah. Can't help it. It gives me something to do.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Hey, thank you all again for watching. Have a good one.
You too.
Oh man, it's a perfect backdrop for this too.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm cooked about medium.
Oh man, one of the best things to do is get out there in the shoals.
Yeah.
About so far, just like sit down and lay back, let the water beat you.
That would be good.
Oh yeah, just put your foot on the rock. You know? Oh. I do it down at the house where it stays still. I can float. I can just float there, and just let the water go around.
You're right. It's flowing clean today.
Mm-hmm.